everyone. Thanks so much for joining today's webinar. My name is Marley Long, and I'll go ahead and get things kicked off. Today, the webinar will cover how financial service organizations can improve SharePoint and Office 365 adoption with analytics. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get things started. So this webinar is being recorded, so if you want to share this with a colleague in the next few days, we'll go ahead and send an email to everyone who signed up, and we'll send you the recording as well. You can connect to us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @Cardiolog. And of course, if you have any questions, we'll leave some time today towards the end of the webinar to try to answer as many questions as we can. And you can send your questions through the questions box within the GoToWebinar panel. In regards to the agenda for today's webinar, we'll start out with a very short introduction. We'll talk a little bit about Interlock, who we are and what we do. Then I'll jump into a presentation with some tips and some of the best metrics that you can use to monitor and improve SharePoint adoption and usage. I'll also present a little bit of our SaaS-based solution just to show you a bit more of what you can do with Cardiolog SaaS. Just a brief introduction. Interlock has been around now for about 11 years. We're based out of Boston, and over the past 11 years we've been focused on one thing and one thing only, and that's analytics designed for SharePoint and Office 365. So our flagship solution is Cardiolog Analytics, and it's built specifically for internal platforms, including all versions of SharePoint from 2007 to 2016, as well as SharePoint Online and Office 365. We can also track third-party tools like Yammer, Citrion, CRM tools as well. And the solution is available both as an on-prem or as a SaaS-based version, which is hosted in Power BI. So our goal is to help our customers constantly improve SharePoint based on how it's being used. And for today's presentation specifically, we decided to focus on how these analytic reports can assist financial institutions. So, faced with the need to operate, very efficiently and more cost-effectively, financial organizations are met with a variety of internal challenges. So many of these financial service institutions are embracing what we call advanced analytics for their portals that are really enabling them to see the big picture. So then they use these intelligent insights to make important decisions to boost their portal ROI and help their employees really gain value from it. And just a few of the leading organizations using Cardiolog Analytics are organizations like Suncor, Solera, Old Mutual, Fidelity, the IMF, and more. And so there's three main pillars that we talk with our customers about. So the first you'll see here is to monitor. So that's the first step. So essentially that's the most basic step, which is tracking the usage within SharePoint. The second step that we talk about is engaging these users, so asking them what their needs are, what their pain points are, and what's not working for them. And then finally, the most important pillar is to enhance. So we want to constantly make sure that we're always improving SharePoint based on these three pillars. And the idea is to have these actionable metrics which allow us to constantly make SharePoint better for the users. Just to give you an idea of what some of our financial services customers have been able to do with analytics, I wanted to share just a few examples with you. So in terms of improving portal ROI, they were able to engage with enterprise users, so increasing that portal productivity. And by collecting insights from their users, they were able to really drive home more collaboration within the portal. The second thing that they were able to do, so analytics can be used to identify user challenges. So this is a really great aspect of using analytics as well as optimization tools. So our customers facilitated these innovative survey discussions, and based on those insights that they collected from the survey discussions, they were able to empower and improve user innovation. They were also able to enhance portal usability So an example of that, they could identify specific videos in the portal that were viewed for 20 seconds or less, and then they could identify or replace ineffective video content. And similarly, they could identify unviewed announcements or updates, and then they were able to inform site owners how to most effectively position that content for increased viewing in the portal. And the last example that I have is increasing corporate productivity. So they were able to identify failed search queries. So this was really effective in saving employee time. So they were able to actually refine those failed searches by identifying the failed search queries. And they also identified how many users were accessing the portal less than 5 times per week. So then they could easily see which specific users were in need of more training. And I'll go into in depth a little bit of these examples a bit later once I start showing you guys some of those key metrics that we talk about. So why do we need analytics when talking about SharePoint adoption, and how do analytics play into it? So the key here is that you can only manage what you can measure. So only can we know, really what's going on in SharePoint and really define if the launch was successful at all is by measuring. So how can we measure if people are using it and if adoption is increasing? So these are really important questions that we need to be asking when we start analyzing the portal. So being able to measure what's going on, and that's really the end goal that we help our customers with. So how can we measure the deployment, analyze it, and then help customers improve their environments based on what's going on with real data. And again, making an investment, in an intranet or even a migration, for example, this includes a large amount of resources. So it can be in the form of budgets, particularly for licenses or consultants, as well as human resources, which can involve multiple teams, administrators, developers, stakeholders. So by leveraging analytics, you can really find out whether your organization is performing as expected and whether your employees are truly finding value in the portal. So let's hop into a short demonstration. I'll show you a few examples of how we can really track adoption, and there's 2 things that I really want to emphasize when we talk about tracking adoption. So one is the ability to measure what's going on in SharePoint and measure and manage the adoption and really show that it's improving. And 2 is just as important is actionable metrics. So at the end of the day, when you're looking at this data, if the data doesn't let you take action, then this data is essentially useless. So the end goal is really that we want to leverage SharePoint and measure adoption with the end goal of making SharePoint better for the users. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the Cardiolog Analytics user interface. I'll go ahead and build a dashboard from scratch with you guys. So you can see here, this is actually the Cardiolog Analytics user interface for our on-prem version. A little later, I'll show you our SaaS-based solution as well, which is a bit of a different interface because it's in Power BI. But this is actually our own user interface. And I want to build a dashboard from scratch just to show you A, how easy it is, and B, how powerful these dashboards can be to help you manage and track adoption. So let's build a new report here together. We'll go down here. So we'll click New Report. And let's just give this a name quickly. Okay. And what we will receive is a blank report in edit mode. So it's super easy to drag and drop those metrics that I've been telling you about onto our dashboard. So I'll just go ahead and click one of these grids on my canvas here. So since we're talking about adoption, today I'm going to focus within this visitors category here of analytics. So there's a lot more categories that you can find within Cardiolog Analytics on-prem. So for example, we have a lot of search analytics, portal growth, navigation, page views, goals. We have our social analytics as well, but we'll go ahead and jump into this visitors category for today, since this is the most relevant category in terms of tracking your adoption. All right, so we'll go ahead and go into our inactive users. So I'll start out with this report. So this is one of the easiest metrics that you can use to take action. So inactive users, very simple. These are your folks who rarely or don't use SharePoint at all. So once you know who these users are, you can really take action, and you can ask them, why aren't you using the portal? And if they don't know how to, well, that's very simple. You can go ahead and put them in a training session, and in that way, we can really work towards improving our adoption rates. So that's our first metric here to help us manage our inactive users. So go ahead and we'll focus on our unique users now. And we'll go ahead and make a graph out of that. So this is another great metric, unique users. So here you can see a trend over time of unique individuals. So obviously if we see this chart growing over time like we see here, more folks from the organization are leveraging SharePoint, really allowing us to show management or whoever we want that over time employees are using and benefiting and gaining value from SharePoint as well. And another metric, which is one of my favorites, is the AD user groups. So we talked about individual users, but if you have thousands or perhaps tens of thousands of users, that may be a little bit more difficult to manage. So in that sense, we can actually monitor groups of users. And with that, maybe we can find out if there are very specific departments in the organization that aren't adopting very well. And then with that, vital information that we gathered, we can really pinpoint these groups with more training or more sessions to understand what they need from SharePoint. And here you'll see a list of all the different groups from your organization, and again, very easy to analyze what we call this actionable data. And here at the bottom, we can actually see some of these laggers. So you can see, for example, we have 3 groups, the marketing team, perhaps the integration, the international or the extranet teams. And we can see here that they are the laggers within this metric, and we want to ask ourselves, why aren't they using SharePoint very often? Why aren't the marketing folks using the portal? So now we know that they're not using the portal as often, so let's improve that. And we can actually provide training and simply target these very specific groups. And this is, as opposed to some organizations who give their groups, departments, or regions the same amount of training across the board. That's a little silly. So let's instead spend those resources on the groups that are really lacking within SharePoint, and let's offer them training. So let's go ahead and actually see if this training was worthwhile. And again, this is really important so that we can really spend these resources effectively. So in order to actually see if a training was worthwhile, let's go into our unique users, and we'll actually create a chart this time. So I'll actually want to take a specific group, for example, and I'll want to essentially slice and dice this data. So let's take, for example, we were talking about our marketing folks before. Okay, so we can actually filter here, as you see, by users and groups, and we'll click Customize, and we'll search Marketing. Select that here. Okay. So now I actually see only users from that group, so that's very easily. And finally, I want to compare data for each user before and after training to see what's going on. So obviously, if there's an increase in usage after the training, I can go back and show that our training was really powerful and was really helping folks. So we'll go here, we'll click on Compare to Past Period. Okay. So on the left-hand side here, you can now see all of our folks from the marketing group, and this is actually the change rate. So this is what we want to see, is these green arrows showing an increase in adoption, and that's really, what we want to see and what we're looking for here. So you can see in most cases, almost everyone has gone up. A few people have stayed the same, but again, that's really what we're looking for, is that change rate and that green arrow of that increase in the change rate from a past period over time. So step one here was to find out, we said, who's not using SharePoint very often, and step two was to provide training and then go back to make sure that that training was actually helping. And you can see here that boost in adoption for the group that was originally our laggers. So I think that's a really powerful metric to really understand what's going on in the portal, from a past period to the current period of time. I'd like to show you just one more metric. So we'll go here and we'll go into depth of visit. This is one of my favorites as well. So depth of visit, here we have a few, you can see under the depth of visit, in this environment particularly, the depth is pretty shallow. So most of our users, when they open up SharePoint, you can see here, they're only viewing one page. Whereas usually when we see folks with higher adoption rates and that have more services within SharePoint, with employees utilizing it more, that depth of visit is much deeper, and you would actually see that they're browsing through more pages, so browsing to 4 or 5 pages in one session. So this is just another really great indicator to show the health of the current adoption, and the goal is to really have the depth of visit as more than 5 pages or more, because then you know that people are really spending time in the portal and are really getting what they need. Okay, so this is a dashboard that I've created. So let's go ahead and generate a report. So we'll click here under Actions, and we'll click Generate Report. And how can we get this adoption information to the right people? So if this data isn't being accessed by our site owners or our administrators, we can easily share this data with your colleagues by creating a distribution list. So you can actually distribute to hundreds of different site owners and have Cardiolog send it out automatically to each site owner, so he or she can see the adoption of their department or of their site. So you can send it out via report or PDF, or another neat way to share the data is as a web part. So you can actually have an adoption metrics page on each site on your portal, and it can show all of this data. And of course it's dynamic, so every day when you browse to the page, you can see, okay, who are my top users for today, who are my inactive users for today, and who are my top groups, and so forth. So that's just a very quick introduction to some of the metrics that we can provide around SharePoint, with the end goal of taking action to constantly measure and to constantly improve our adoption levels. So I mentioned previously that I was going to show some of our reports as well in our SaaS-based version. So another thing I'll show you now towards the end of our session is our Cardiolog Analytics SaaS. So this is an all-encompassing SaaS solution versus this on-prem solution which I showed you previously. So our SaaS solution is provided through the Power BI data visualization interface, and it's hosted on Microsoft Azure servers. And Power BI is an analytics visualization engine developed by Microsoft, and it really provides a nice kind of comfortable user interface, so you can really explore your data through this kind of free-form and drag and drop canvas. So here you can see the dashboards and the report sections here. So these are the two main sections that you'll work with when you open up Cardiolog SaaS and Power BI. And specifically, Cardiolog SaaS comes with a set of pre-made reports and dashboards that we've put together in a way that we thought would be most beneficial for our users. So at the moment, we have 20 pages in reports. So you can see here at the bottom, I'll actually go ahead and make this full screen. So you can see here at the bottom, we have these 20 pages in reports, and we actually are constantly adding more. And when we designed these reports, we had a few things in mind. So the main purpose is, one, to provide the data, but we wanted to kind of take it to the next level. And instead of saying like, hey, here are your page views, here are your visitors, go ahead, go out there, go make decisions, we wanted to actually help our users understand what they can learn from the data that is provided for them. And more specifically, we wanted the reports to be built in a way that actually helps users know how they should measure their business and their portal goals. So for that, having experience of 11 years in measuring SharePoint was really helpful. But we also spent a lot of time with our customers to really understand what they care about and what they define as portal success. So together we came up with these kind of 5 portal goals, which we learned organizations are using SharePoint, that they care most about. So perhaps some of these may resonate with you. So the first goal was SharePoint adoption, which is exactly what we're talking about today. So whether or not users are actually using SharePoint. The second goal was based around visitor engagement. So once users are actually in the portal, how engaged are they with the portal and with each other? The third was collaboration. So are users making the most out of the SharePoint collaboration capabilities? The fourth was portal usability. So talking about the user experience, how easy it is for the users to use the portal. And the fifth was the optimization of portal resources, as well as supporting a migration process. So this really allows organizations to save money by learning what they can, remove from the portal before a migration, and where they can spend their resources throughout the migration process. And another thing, one of the great things that we learned as we went with Power BI is that if you don't feel like any of these categories fit the needs of your organization or match your goals, or if you have, very unique goals, which we haven't covered, it's really easy to take any piece of information, that we've gathered with Cardiolog and create a report in any way that you would like. So a great report is one that, really tells a story, one that lays down all the pieces to the puzzle and can really give you a full picture of what you're trying to see. So I'll go ahead and dive into this visitor adoption overview report. And so all of these reports that we have they were designed very carefully, and they're all meant to actually interact with each other and give you these deeper insights. So you can see here, this is our overview report for visitor adoption. And there's a few things that you can see right off the bat here. So here you can see your active user rate chart. And this chart, specifically here, so this shows you the total registered SharePoint users and the trend over time. So let's go ahead and click on April. So this is actually the lowest result. And once we click on that, we can actually see how it interacts with the rest of the widgets on the report. And if you click on that, you can see that only 33% of the users were active. And we can see how many users became active that month as well. Over on the right-hand side, we can see the new users rate. And so these metrics will show you roughly what the usage percentage is and the rate out of your user base. But knowing all of this information is great, but it's not enough. So what we also want to know is what they're doing once they're inside SharePoint. So for example, if you think about a case where 95% of the active, you have a 95% active user rate, well, that can look really amazing on your first dashboard. But what if I told you that they only visit SharePoint once a week, and they only spend a minute looking at the home page, and then they leave? So that's why we added, all of these additional metrics as well, in terms of average length of visit, the single page visits rate, the average depth of visit. I touched on that earlier in the on-prem version. So it's the same metrics here. So, learning how deep your users go into the portal. And again, here the bounce rate, so how many visits ended within 1 minute. And we can also see the trend over time to see if anything has changed throughout time. So if you see any of these disturbances in the patterns or a spike, then that can be a red flag to kind of look into additional reports. We also have this chart of average number of visits per user per week, and we can see how much time they spend in an average visit and how many pages they see in an average visit as well. So you can click here, and again, you can drill down into that, into specific documents that they're visiting on these visits as well. And combining all of this information together can really give you an idea of your user adoption rates. But again, this report here is just an overview. So to see more information, you'll really need to drill down into some of our more individual reports. So let's go ahead and do that. So here you have your visitor adoption and your inactive users. And this represents a drill down of what I just mentioned previously from that overview report. And this shows you the percentage of inactive users in each department. And I apologize that it's lagging a bit. Okay, there it goes. It seems to be loading. So you can also drill down and see exactly who they are. So here you can see your active and inactive users by department. So if you're wondering how this is done specifically, so it's done by pulling information from SharePoint. So one of the things that we pull is attributes from SharePoint profiles, and as well as from the Active Directory groups, which I mentioned previously. So it's the same information that we have in the on-prem version, just presented in a bit of a different way. So you can easily select which attributes you would like to include in each report, and you can even include your own attributes as well. And as we mentioned previously, not all departments need the same amount of training. So here you can actually see which departments require more training, for example. So here, IT, they had the highest number of inactive users. So let's click on that. And here you can see the number of visits by username, so you can see all your specific users within that IT department. And again, that's very similar to what I showed you previously in our charts. So you can also click on them and see their details on the right-hand side as well. So for example, I can click on this user, Caden Taylor, and if you have photos within the portal, that will show up as well. Again, this is just demo data. So here you can see kind of even more details about them, including their office, their department, and their job title specifically. And then you can actually see on the right-hand side, a full report of their activity. So here you can see their information by quarter, and then you can actually drill down into their activity by specific day. And again, what hours they're most active within that specific day. And drilling down even deeper, you can actually see which content they interacted with the most. So this is really powerful in order to improve adoption, to help you really see who are these most and least active users in order to dedicate more training and more time towards these specific users. And you can really take this list and really use it to ask your users, why aren't you using SharePoint, and really understand, who are your least active users and who are your most active users. And you can even interact with your most active users and collect insights from them to see how you can kind of replicate that success. So that's a really nice visualization, again, of your active and inactive users. I'm going to talk a little bit now about usability. So this is, again, another really important aspect of the portal. So we're talking about adoption, and adoption, we covered that high-level overview, but usability is actually how you can improve adoption. And by improving adoption, you are actually improving usability at the same time. So if your users don't like the user experience, then they simply won't use SharePoint as much. So a key thing here is search. So if your users can't find things and are struggling, then that's not a good use of their time, and this is where these search reports can come in to help you see how your users are searching in the portal, if they're, if they have some roadblocks or challenges in the search schema. So here you can see exactly what people are searching for. So if you click here, you have all your search phrases. You can see at the top, you can see the number of searches, as well. You can see the average number of results, etc. And you can see that 7% of times, 9% of times, the result clicked out of searches. So that's a pretty low number of people who are clicking. So if you see that, then you know, okay, maybe I need to improve my search schema or include you know, missing content in the portal that's not there that users are searching for, as well as improving the search queries. So you can also see trends to see what people are searching for or what they care about in this nice visualization of these search phrases here. And you can see that search phrases that are more popular will be bigger, and ones that are less popular will appear smaller. So a good example that I like, so holidays. If you see this search phrase here, we can click on holidays. We can actually see how it's trending over time, and we saw that essentially around the holiday period, more people are searching for search phrases relating to holidays. So site owners can actually add more content around this search phrase around that specific time of year. You can also see a trend of percent of failed searches. So if content was deleted and now maybe people can't find it, or perhaps it's been moved and people can't find what they're looking for, that's a really great indicator to understand how many failed searches are happening within the portal. And we have a lot of other different reports in terms of usability. We've also got a great report on our portal responsiveness. So this is really helpful for IT users as well. But for today, since we're talking about adoption, I focused on these specific reports. But again, if you're interested, we have over 20 different reports, so we can definitely provide a demonstration for you and your team that will go a bit more in depth to cover, you know, things that will be more specific to you as well. So if you are interested in a demo of either our SaaS or our on-prem solution, feel free to send a chat into the chat box, and I'll be happy to set you up with one with someone from our team. All right. And I think we've got just a few minutes for a bit more Q&A. So let's, if you have any questions at this time, I'll be happy to answer them. So you can go ahead and enter your questions into the chat box, and go ahead and try to answer some of these questions that you guys have. Oops. All right, I'll just give you guys a few more seconds to enter in any questions you may have. All right, so I've got one question from Mark asking if we can track social platforms, specifically Yammer. So the answer to that is yes. So we have a broad range of reports available to track Yammer and all those kinds of fine details within Yammer as well. So including reports like user adoption rate, top groups in Yammer, group activity, influential users, followers, likes, and more. So if you're interested in tracking Yammer, we can also provide a very tailored demonstration to show you very specific reports that we can provide to track the Yammer platform. I've got another question coming in from Stephanie asking how CardiLog Analytics is designed specifically for SharePoint. So I mentioned again previously in the presentation that CardiLog Analytics is the only analytics solution out there designed specifically for SharePoint. So CardiLog is based on the structure and content of SharePoint sites, so particularly intranet portals, but also extranet and websites. So being designed for SharePoint means that CardiLog Analytics can provide accurate and useful data on your SharePoint implementation. And among other things, it seamlessly integrates with SharePoint user profiles, so really enabling you to make use of that flexible use of that data on the people who use your site. And it also supports SharePoint Fast search server, so offering insights into how people are using the Fast search engine as well. And as I mentioned, that CardiLog is designed for SharePoint, but also works with Office 365 as well. And the last question I have for today, about all the time we have, is from Roger. So he's asking if we have a free trial. So yes, if you're interested, we have both a 30-day trial for our on-premises version as well as a 7-day trial for SaaS-based version. So just simply send a chat into the chat box if you're interested in the trial, and I'll be sure to get you squared away. All right, so that's all the time that we have for today. So again, for a free trial or a personal demo, feel free to visit us at www.intlock.com. You can join our readers at blog.intlock.com, and if you have any questions, feel free again to send them into the chat box, or you can email us at info@intlock.com. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.